The question left my mouth trembling, barely a whisper, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Where is the money I had saved? Mason barely looked up from his smartphone for a second, as if I had asked something trivial, like asking about the weather or the time. We used it for something more important. Mom, that's what he said. Just like that. So cold. Like someone saying they picked up a loaf of bread, not that they drained my life savings. My heart stopped. I felt the walls of that narrow room closing in, the air turning dense, heavy, unbreathable. More important? I repeated, and my voice sounded so small it scared me. More important than what, Mason? He didn't even look at me this time. He kept tapping on that screen with those fingers I had held when he was a baby, those fingers I held when he learned to walk. More important than your old lady whims, Mom. You don't need that anymore. Paige, my daughter-in-law, was sitting on the other side of the table with a new purse on her lap, a designer purse. I recognized it because I had seen it in a department store window days ago. She gave a faint smile, as if I were a toddler throwing a silly tantrum. That was when my brother Arthur stood up from his chair. The sound of the wood scraping against the floor echoed through the whole house. His face was red, tense, his fists clenched at his sides. What did you just say? His voice was deep, controlled, but we could all feel the fury underneath. Mason looked at him with annoyance, as if Arthur were an intruder, someone who had no right to an opinion. Uncle Arthur, this isn't your problem. Arthur took a step forward. The hell it isn't. That is my sister, and you just confessed that you stole her money. The word hung in the air. Stole. Mason stood up too, nervous now, trying to maintain control. I didn't steal anything. That money was just sitting there unused. We needed it. Paige nodded, as if that were a reasonable explanation. I remained seated, paralyzed, feeling everything I had built in my life crumbling before my eyes. That money wasn't just any money. It wasn't a whim. It wasn't a luxury. It was 32 years of my life saved in a bank account. 32 years of waking up before dawn, of cleaning other people's houses, of ironing clothes that weren't mine, of cooking in cafeterias where no one knew my name. 32 years of saying no to everything. To a new dress, to a dinner at a nice restaurant, to a vacation, to anything that was just for me. Because I had a plan. Because I had a small, quiet dream. But it was mine. I wanted to fix up the house. I wanted to put a new floor in the kitchen, paint the walls, change those drafty windows that let the cold in during winter. I wanted, for the first time in decades, to live in a place that felt dignified, not luxurious, just dignified. And I wanted to save something for the day my body couldn't work anymore, so I wouldn't be a burden, so I wouldn't have to beg, so I could say, I have my own, but now that money was gone. The $28,000 I had gathered penny by penny had vanished. And my son, the son I gave everything to, was standing there telling me he used it for something more important. Arthur kept staring at him. Tell me right now what you spent that money on. Mason clenched his jaw. We fixed up the house. We upgraded the car. We did necessary things. Arthur let out a bitter, humorless laugh. Your house? Your car? With her money? Paige intervened with that soft voice she always used to justify the unjustifiable. Eleanor, you live here with us. The improvements we made to the house benefit you too. I felt something break inside me. Something old, deep, that had been holding my entire being together for years. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. I didn't ask you to improve anything. That money was mine. It was for my home, for my life. Mason looked at me as if I were being irrational. Mom, you're old. What do you need that for? You're fine here. You're fine here. Those words stuck like pins in my chest. I wasn't fine. I had never been fine in that house. Ever since I sold my small condo 3 years ago to move in with them, because Mason insisted, because he said it was for the best, because I shouldn't be alone anymore. Since then, I slept in a room next to the laundry room. A room without big windows, without a decent closet, without real privacy. While they slept in a master suite with a private bathroom, a walk-in closet with everything, and I never said anything. Because a mother doesn't complain. Because a mother is grateful. Because a mother understands. But that money was the only thing I had left. It was my exit strategy. It was my breathing room. It was the proof that I still existed as something more than a shadow in my son's house. Arthur walked toward Mason with slow, measured steps. You are going to pay her back every single cent. Mason stepped back slightly but tried to keep his posture. I don't have all that cash right now, Uncle. We already invested it. As if they had the right. As if they had asked for permission. As if I didn't matter. Then you're going to get it, Arthur said with a calm that was scarier than any scream. I don't care how. You're going to return what belongs to her. And you're going to start right now by telling her exactly what you spent it on. Everything. Down to the last dollar. Mason looked at Paige, seeking support, but she was nervous now too. I remained standing, hands trembling, trying to process that this was real. That my son had really done this. That the person I carried, fed, clothed, defended from everything and everyone, had robbed me. There was no other word. He had robbed me. We remodeled the kitchen, Mason said finally, voice tense. We replaced the living room furniture. We bought the SUV we needed because the sedan was dying. We paid off debts. Arthur interrupted him. Whose debts? Silence. Paige looked down. Ours, Mason admitted. We had overdue credit cards. Arthur closed his eyes for a moment, as if holding back something enormous. Then he looked at me. Eleanor, did you know anything about this? I shook my head, unable to speak. I knew nothing. I trusted. I had put the money in an account where Mason had access only for emergencies. He had asked me for it 2 years ago. Just in case something happens to you, Mom. In case you need it and I have to access it quickly. And I, as always, trusted. As always, I said yes. As always, I put my son before myself. Then this wasn't a mistake, Arthur said slowly, letting every word drop like a stone. This was planned. You two knew exactly what you were doing. Paige stood up, indignant now. We didn't act with malice. We just used money that was sitting there doing nothing. She lives here. She doesn't pay rent. She doesn't pay for groceries. We pay for all of that. I felt something explode inside me. I don't pay? My voice came out stronger than I expected. I clean this house every day. I cook. I do the laundry. I watch your kids when you go out. I do everything you don't want to do. And you say I don't pay. Paige looked at me in surprise, as if I had never raised my voice before. And it was true. I never had. Mason tried to calm me down with that condescending gesture he always used. Mom, don't get worked up. It's not good for your blood pressure. But I couldn't stop now. Don't talk to me about my blood pressure. Talk to me about my money. Talk to me about why you thought you had the right to take it without asking me. Talk to me about why your wife is using a purse that costs over $1,000 while I have nothing. Paige touched the bag instinctively, as if protecting it. This was a gift, she said defensively. A gift from who? Arthur asked with irony. She didn't answer. Mason didn't either. The silence said it all. Arthur walked over to me and put a firm hand on my shoulder. Eleanor, this isn't staying like this. We're going to get your money back. All of it. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel there was justice. But a part of me, the tired, old, broken part, just wanted to disappear. I wanted to wake up and discover that all of this had been a nightmare. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, in that small room next to the laundry, staring at the bare walls, feeling the weight of all the years falling on me like an avalanche. I couldn't stop thinking about Mason's face when he said those words. We used it for something more important. As if I weren't important. As if my life wasn't worth anything. And the worst part was that a piece of me, that piece that had been trained for decades to justify everything, was still looking for excuses for him. Still trying to understand. Still wanting to believe there was some reason, some misunderstanding, something I wasn't seeing. But there wasn't. The truth was simple and brutal. My son had robbed me. And he had done it without remorse. I closed my eyes and forced myself to go back. To remember how I had gotten here. How I had allowed this to happen. And the answer was buried in 40 years of history. 40 years of putting myself last. 40 years of believing that was love. Mason was born when I was 29. His father, my husband Robert, died in an accident 2 years later. A semi-truck lost control, an instant. And suddenly, I was alone with a toddler and no plan. No real savings. No close family except Arthur, who lived in another city and did what he could. Robert had been a driver. He left no pension. He left no life insurance. He only left debts and a rented apartment I couldn't afford alone. So I did what I had to do. I got work cleaning houses. First one, then two, then three. I would wake up at 4 in the morning, leave Mason with the neighbor, and cross the city on 2 buses to get to the houses where I worked. Big houses, with lawns, with guest rooms that were never used, with closets full of clothes that still had tags on them. I scrubbed those shiny floors, dusted those expensive furniture pieces, and then returned to my 2-bedroom apartment where the paint was peeling and the hot water only worked sometimes. But I didn't complain, because I had Mason, and Mason was everything to me. He was the reason I got up, the reason I kept going. I enrolled him in the best school I could afford. It wasn't private, but it was decent. I bought his school supplies brand new every year, even if I wore the same shoes for 3 years straight. I packed his lunch every morning with the best I could get: chicken, fruit, juice boxes. While I ate peanut butter sandwiches and canned soup, he had brand-name sneakers. I had discount sandals. He went to birthday parties with a gift in hand. I never celebrated mine. And when he asked, "Why don't you buy yourself something new, Mom?" I would smile and say, "I don't need anything, honey. Seeing you happy is enough. I'm fine." And I believed it. Back then, I really believed it. Arthur visited when he could. He always brought something: groceries, cash, toys for Mason. And always, he told me the same thing. "Eleanor, you have to think about yourself too. That boy has to learn that you matter too." I would laugh. "He's my son, Arthur. He's my responsibility." He would shake his head, worried. "Responsibility doesn't mean erasing yourself." But I didn't listen. Because in my head, being a good mother meant total sacrifice. It meant that I didn't matter, that my needs didn't exist, that my only purpose was to make sure Mason had everything I never had. That was my mission. And I fulfilled it with a devotion that now, sitting in that dark room, seemed sickly to me. Mason grew up. He became a teenager. He started asking for more things: brand name clothes, cell phone, outings with friends, and I kept saying yes. I kept working more hours. I got a 4th job cleaning offices at night. I slept 4 hours. My body started hurting all the time. My back, my knees, my hands swollen from scrubbing floors. But Mason had what he needed. Mason was okay, and that was the only thing that mattered. When he finished high school, he wanted to study business administration. Tuition was expensive, too expensive. But I found a way. I took out a loan. I worked double shifts. I stopped going to the doctor even though I felt my body breaking down. And he studied, and I paid every semester on time. During those years, Mason still lived at home. But I barely saw him. He left early, came back late. He had friends, parties, a life. I was just the woman who cooked, washed, and gave him money when he asked. "Mom, I need money for textbooks. Mom, I need gas money. Mom, I need money for a school project." And I gave. I always gave. I never asked if he really needed that much. I never said no, because saying no meant being a bad mother. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't fail him. Arthur kept insisting, "Eleanor, that boy has to learn to work. He has to value what you do for him." But I defended him. "He's studying. He can't work and go to college at the same time." Arthur looked at me with sadness. "Of course he can. Millions do it. You did it." But I didn't want Mason to suffer like I suffered. I didn't want him to feel the exhaustion I felt. I didn't want him to know hunger, humiliation, the pain of going without. So I kept giving. I kept emptying myself to fill him up. And he kept receiving as if it were natural, as if it were his right. When he graduated, finding a job was hard. Months passed. I kept supporting him. "Don't worry, son. Take your time. Find something good." He didn't even say thank you anymore. He just nodded and kept expecting things to fall from the sky. Finally, he found a job at a small company. The salary wasn't much, but it was something. I hoped that now he would start contributing to the house, that he would help me, even a little. But no, he used his money for himself, for his clothes, for his nights out, for his life, and I kept paying the rent, the food, the utilities, everything. One day he came home with Paige. He introduced her as his girlfriend. She was pretty, groomed, with a handshake that was cold, as if evaluating me. As if I were an old piece of furniture included in the package. From the beginning, I knew she didn't want me there, that I was in the way. But Mason was happy, and if he was happy, I was happy. That was what I believed. They got married 2 years later. An expensive wedding that I helped pay for. It's only once in a lifetime, Mom, and I gave what little savings I had. Because it was his special day. Because I wanted it to be perfect. After the wedding, they moved into a rented apartment. I stayed in mine, finally alone after so many years. And for the first time in my life, I started saving for me. Not much, but something. Every month I put away what I could. $50. Sometimes $100. Depending on the month, I kept it in an account I opened just for that. My account, my money, my future. Mason still asked for help now and then. Mom, we're short on rent. Mom, we need money for the car. And I gave. But now, not everything. Now I kept something for myself too. And that felt strange. It felt selfish. But Arthur encouraged me. Good job, Eleanor. Keep it up. That money is yours. Don't touch it. And I tried. I really tried. Years passed. Mason and Paige had 2 children, beautiful kids that I adored. But I wasn't a priority there either. They only called me when they needed a free babysitter. And I went. I always went. Because they were my grandkids. And because I still believed that's how family love was built. But my body couldn't handle as much anymore. The cleaning jobs started to be too much. My knees were failing me. My back was killing me. I had to leave one of the jobs, then another. My income dropped, and my savings grew slower. But they kept growing, little by little, penny by penny, until they reached $28,000. $28,000 that represented 32 years of my life. 32 years of going without, of quiet pains, of postponed dreams. And now, sitting in that dark room, I understood that all that effort had been for nothing. Because my son, the son I gave everything to, had taken it without thinking twice, without asking me, without caring, as if I were nothing, as if my sacrifice was worth nothing, as if I was worth nothing. 3 years before everything exploded, Mason came to visit me at my apartment, divided by condo. I hadn't seen him in a while. Weeks, maybe months. I wasn't keeping count anymore. He was always busy. He always had something more important to do. But that day he arrived with Paige and the kids. He knocked on the door with that smile I knew so well. That smile he used when he needed something. "Hi, Mom." He hugged me quickly, without strength, like someone fulfilling a requirement. Paige entered behind him, looking at the apartment with poorly concealed disgust. The kids ran to me, and I received them with a full heart. They did love me. They did hug me for real. "Mom, we have to talk about something important," Mason said as he sat on the old armchair I'd had forever. Paige remained standing, arms crossed, as if she didn't want to touch anything. I sat across from them, nervous without knowing why. "What's wrong, son?" He exchanged a look with Paige. She nodded, giving him permission to continue. "We're worried about you, Mom. You're not young anymore. This apartment is really run down. The stairs are dangerous. If something happens to you here, you'd be alone." I looked around. The apartment was old. Yes, but it was clean, organized. It was my space, my refuge. "I'm fine, Mason. I can take care of myself." He shook his head, with that expression he used when he thought I didn't understand things. "No, Mom, it's not fine. That's why we want you to come live with us." My heart skipped a beat. Live with them? Part of me felt hope. Maybe this meant they wanted me close, that they missed me, that finally I was going to be part of their daily life. "We bought a house," Mason continued with pride. "It has 3 bedrooms. One for us, one for the kids, and one for you. You'll be more comfortable. You'll have company. And we'll be at peace, knowing you're okay," Paige added with a sweet voice. Too sweet. "Plus, Eleanor, you can help us with the kids. I'm working now, and it would be good to have Grandma at home." There it was. The truth behind the proposal. They didn't want me close for love. They wanted me close for convenience. To watch the kids, to clean, to cook, to solve their lives while they worked. But I wanted to believe there was more. I wanted to believe there was affection too. So I asked what I needed to know. And this apartment? What would happen to it? Mason didn't hesitate. "You sell it. Mom, with that money you help pay for part of the house, we all win. You live better, and we get some breathing room with the mortgage." I felt something cold in my stomach, but this apartment is mine. It's the only thing I have in my name. Mason leaned forward, taking my hands. "Mom, what do you need it for? You're going to live with us. You won't pay rent anymore. You won't be alone. It's best for everyone." I looked at Arthur in my mind. I heard his voice telling me, "Don't do it. Don't sell what's yours." But Arthur wasn't there, and Mason was. My son, my only son. The one I had raised, the one who needed my help. I sold the condo 2 months later. I got $42,000. It wasn't much, but it was something. Mason asked me for $30,000 for the house. "It's an investment, Mom. You're going to live there too. It's like it's yours too." I gave him the money, and I kept the remaining $12,000 in my savings account, along with the $28,000 I already had. $40,000 in total. It was my cushion, my security, my future. I moved into the new house with 2 suitcases of clothes and a box of photographs. That was all I had left of a whole life. Mason showed me my room with enthusiasm. "Look, Mom, here's where you'll stay." It was the smallest room. It was next to the laundry room. It didn't have a big closet. The window faced a wall, but it had a bed and a nightstand. And Mason seemed so proud to show me that I smiled and said, "It's perfect. Thanks, son." The first weeks were confusing. I didn't really know what my place was there. Paige had her routines, her rules, her spaces, and I tried not to intrude. I tried to be invisible. Useful but invisible. I got up early to make breakfast. I cleaned the kitchen, did the laundry, watched the kids when they went out, and nobody said thank you. Nobody asked if I needed anything. Nobody included me in decisions. I was just there, like a piece of furniture, like an employee who didn't get paid. Arthur came to visit me a month after I moved in. He knocked on the door and Mason received him coldly. They had always had a tense relationship. Mason felt Arthur filled my head with ideas. And Arthur felt Mason used me. "I came to see my sister," Arthur said bluntly. Mason let him in reluctantly. I came out of the kitchen drying my hands on my apron. Arthur hugged me tight, and I felt something inside me crack. "How are you, Eleanor?" I nodded quickly. "Fine. Everything is fine." He looked me in the eyes and knew I was lying. "Show me your room." We walked toward the back of the house. He entered the room and his expression changed. He looked at the simple twin bed, the old nightstand, the small window, the laundry door 3 feet away. "This is where they put you." His voice was low but full of contained rage. I tried to defend them. "It's enough for me. I don't need more." Arthur turned to me. "Eleanor, you gave $30,000 for this house, and they gave you the smallest room, the one next to the washing machines. While they sleep in a huge master bedroom with a private bath and walk-in closet." I didn't know what to say. Because it was true, and it hurt to admit it. "You sold your apartment," Arthur continued, "your only asset, and now you have nothing in your name. This house isn't yours. It's only in Mason and Paige's name. You're just a guest here. Do you realize that?" Yes, I realized. But admitting it was too painful. "He's my son," I said quietly. "I know he's inconsiderate sometimes, but he needs me." Arthur shook his head, tired. "No, Eleanor. He doesn't need you. He uses you. And you let him." He stayed a few more hours. We ate together. He tried to converse with Mason, but the tension was evident. Paige barely spoke a word to him. When he left, he hugged me at the door and whispered in my ear, "If you ever need to get out of here, just call me. You'll always have a place with me." Months passed and the dynamic became clearer. I was the unpaid domestic help. I woke up at 6 in the morning to prepare everyone's breakfast. I took the kids to school. I cleaned the whole house. Washed, ironed, cooked, did the grocery shopping. And when they got home from work, I served dinner, cleared the table, and retired to my room. I didn't participate in family conversations. I didn't sit with them to watch TV. I didn't exist beyond my function. And the worst part was that I accepted it, because I believed that's how it should be, because I believed that was my place. Mason almost never spoke to me, only when he needed me to do something extra. "Mom, can you stay with the kids on Saturday? We're going out." "Mom, can you wash this today? I need it tomorrow." "Mom, we're out of detergent. Can you go buy some?" Paige was worse. She treated me with that fake politeness that hurts more than direct rudeness. "Eleanor, the food was a little salty today." "Eleanor, look closely when you wash. This blouse got stained." "Eleanor, the kids say you give them candy before dinner. Don't do that again." I nodded. I apologized. I made myself smaller. Because I didn't want trouble. Because I didn't want them to kick me out. Because the idea of being alone again terrified me more than the daily humiliation. But there was something I protected. My savings account. Those $40,000 that now, after giving $30,000 for the house, had become $12,000 again, plus the $28,000 I had from before. In total, $40. I didn't touch them. I didn't tell anyone exactly how much I had. It was my secret, my safety net, my only escape card if things got worse. But Mason knew I had savings. And 2 years ago, he came to me with a proposal. "Mom, I need you to give me access to your account." I got scared. Why? He put on that worried face he knew worked on me. For safety. If something happens to you, if you get sick, if you have an emergency, I need to be able to get money out fast to help you. That way there are no problems with banks or paperwork. It sounded reasonable. It sounded like he really cared about my well-being. "It's just a precaution, Mom. For your own good." And I, as always, trusted. I signed the papers. I gave him access to my account. I never imagined that 2 years later, that money would disappear, that he would use that access not to protect me, but to rob me, to take the only thing I had left. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. A common, gray Tuesday, nothing special. I was preparing dinner when suddenly I felt something strange in my chest. It wasn't physical pain. It was something worse. It was a feeling of emptiness, of loss, as if something important had broken without making a sound. I didn't understand where that anxiety came from. I tried to ignore it, chop the vegetables, continue the routine, but I couldn't. There was something calling me, something I needed to check. I left the knife on the cutting board and walked to my room. I took out of the nightstand the paper where I had written down the bank's phone number. I hadn't checked my account in months. There was no need. I didn't use it. I just let it grow little by little with the small deposits I still made when I got paid for some sporadic cleaning job. I dialed the number with trembling hands, not knowing why I was so nervous. The operator answered with a kind voice. I gave her my account number, my information. Answered the security questions. "How can I help you, Miss Herrera?" I took a deep breath. "I'd like to know my balance." There was a silence, the sound of typing. Then her voice again. "Your current balance is $3,200. The world stopped. "How much?" I repeated, because surely I had heard wrong. $3,200.15. The operator repeated with the same calm voice, unaware she had just destroyed my reality. My legs stopped holding me up. I sat on the bed feeling the room spin. That can't be. I had $40,000 in that account. The operator typed something else. "Ma'am, I see several large withdrawals in the last 8 months. You didn't authorize them?" "No, I didn't authorize them. I didn't know anything about that. Can you tell me when those withdrawals were?" She started reading dates and amounts. $5,000 in February, $8,000 in March, $7,000 in April, $9,000 in June, $6,000 in August, $3,000 in September, $38,000 taken out in pieces over months. Who made them? I asked with a broken voice. They were branch withdrawals, ma'am, made by the secondary account holder, a Mr. Mason Herrera. My son, my own son. And no one notified me? No one called me to confirm? The operator apologized with empty words. The secondary holder has access to the account, ma'am. We don't require additional authorization. I hung up without saying goodbye. The phone fell from my hand. I stayed sitting there, immobile, trying to process what I had just discovered. $38,000. Almost everything I had. Almost my entire life. Gone. Stolen. By Mason. The son I gave everything to. The son who promised he would only use that access in emergencies. The son in whose house I now lived like a stranger. I felt nauseous. I got up and ran to the bathroom. I vomited the little I had in my stomach. I washed my face with cold water, but I couldn't stop shaking. When I looked in the mirror, I saw an old, tired, destroyed woman. I saw someone who had been stupid, who had trusted too much, who had loved too much, and who now had nothing. I went back to my room and sat on the bed again. I needed to think. I needed to understand. When had this started? Why? What did Mason need so much money for? And then I started to remember. February. It was when they remodeled the kitchen. New cabinets, new stove, everything changed from one day to the next. I asked how they paid for it, and Mason said they had saved up. Lie. March. They bought a car. A shiny new SUV that Paige showed off to her friends. We deserved it, she had said. With my money. April. They changed all the living room furniture. Leather sofas, an expensive coffee table, a huge TV. We got an incredible deal, Mason said. Lie. June. They went on vacation. A whole week at the beach. They left the kids with me and went to enjoy themselves. I thought they had earned it working hard. But no, they paid for it with my money, with my life. August. Paige arrived with new clothes, bags, shoes. There were sales, she told me, when she noticed I was looking at everything she brought. September. Mason changed his cell phone, one of the newest, most expensive ones. The company gave it to me, he lied. Everything. Everything had been paid for with my money. And I was there, cleaning their house, taking care of their children, cooking their meals, not knowing they were robbing me every day, not knowing that every new piece of furniture, every purchase, every luxury came out of my account. From my sacrifice, from my future. I felt so stupid, so blind, so pathetic. How hadn't I noticed before? How hadn't I suspected? Because I trusted, because I loved, because I never imagined my own son would be capable of doing something like that to me. I heard the front door open, Mason and Paige arriving from work. I heard their voices, the kids running to greet them. A normal, happy family scene, built on my ruin. I stayed in my room. I couldn't go out. I couldn't face them yet. I needed time to process, to decide what to do. Someone knocked on the door. Mom, dinner. It was Mason's voice, casual, calm, like nothing was wrong. I'm not hungry, I replied. Are you okay? What an absurd question. No, I wasn't okay. Nothing was okay, just tired. There was a pause. Okay, if you need anything, let me know. He left. He didn't insist. He didn't really care. Because I only mattered when I was useful. When I cooked, cleaned, babysat. Outside of that, I didn't exist to him. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed awake all night, sitting on the bed, staring at the wall, feeling that something fundamental had broken inside me. It wasn't just the money. It was the betrayal. It was realizing that the person I loved most in the world saw me only as a resource, as something to take from without asking, without feeling guilt, without remorse. The next day, I waited for Mason and Paige to leave for work. The kids were at school. The house was empty, silent. I started searching. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I knew there had to be something else. I checked Mason's home office, the desk drawers, and there, in the bottom drawer, I found a folder with bank documents, account statements, credit cards, bills. I started reading and everything became clearer and more horrible. They had huge debts, 3 credit cards maxed out, overdue loans, minimum payments that barely covered the interest. They were drowning financially, and they had used my money to plug the holes, to keep pretending everything was fine, to maintain their lifestyle while I slept in the room next to the laundry, believing they were being generous by giving me a roof. I kept searching and found something that froze my blood. A loan application, recent, from 2 weeks ago. A loan for $15,000. In my name, with my signature, but I hadn't signed anything. I looked at the signature closely. It was almost perfect, almost identical to mine. But it wasn't mine. They had forged my signature. They had tried to take out a loan in my name without my knowledge. The loan was still in the review process. It hadn't been approved yet. But they had tried. They were going to bury me in debt, destroy my credit, leave me with nothing, and on top of that, with debts I could never pay. I felt rage starting to replace the pain. A cold rage, calculating. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It wasn't just disappointment. It was fury, pure and clear. I took photos of all the documents with an old cell phone I had kept. Photos of the statements, of the debts, of the loan application with the forged signature. I saved them. I hid them. Because now I knew this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan. And that plan included destroying me completely. I put everything back in its place, closed the drawers, left the office, and I continued with my day as if nothing had happened. I prepared the food, picked up the kids from school, cleaned the house, but inside everything had changed. I was no longer the naive mother who justified everything. I was no longer the woman who let herself be used without protest. Something had awakened in me, something that had been asleep for decades. And that something had a name. It was called dignity. It was called justice. It was called boundaries. When Mason arrived that night, he looked at me normally. "Hi, Mom. How was your day?" I looked him in the eyes. That man I had carried, that I had fed, that I had loved with every fiber of my being. And I saw a stranger, a thief, someone who didn't deserve my love. "Normal," I replied. "Everything's normal." But nothing was normal. And soon he would know, because this time I wasn't going to stay silent. This time, I wasn't going to forgive without consequences. This time, things were going to be different. I waited 3 days before doing anything. 3 days observing, analyzing, planning. Mason and Paige went on with their lives without worries, buying things, going out, laughing, while I cooked and cleaned with a fake smile. But every night, in my room, I took out the photos I had taken. I looked at them, and I felt my resolve strengthening. Finally, one afternoon, when I couldn't hold it in anymore, I picked up the phone and called Arthur. He answered on the second ring. "Eleanor, what happened? Your voice sounds weird." And there, in that small room next to the laundry, I told him everything. Every detail, every figure, every lie, every document. Arthur listened in silence. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then his voice, low and full of contained rage. "Get ready. I'm coming over. And this isn't staying like this. I promise you." Arthur arrived 2 days later. He didn't warn them. He didn't call ahead. He simply appeared at the door on a Saturday morning, early, with an expression on his face I hadn't seen in years. It was pure determination. Mason opened the door still in pajamas, surprised. "Uncle Arthur? What are you doing here?" Arthur walked in without waiting for an invitation. "I'm here to see my sister." "Is there a problem?" Mason frowned, but stepped aside. Paige came down the stairs with an annoyed look. It had always bothered her when Arthur came. She said he filled my head with negative ideas, that he turned me against them. I was in the kitchen making breakfast. When I saw my brother, something inside me loosened, as if his presence gave me permission to stop pretending, even for a moment. "Good morning, Eleanor." He hugged me hard and I felt tears wanting to come out, but I held them back. Not yet. Not in front of them. Good morning, Arthur. Mason approached with that forced smile he used when he wanted to fake normality. Are you staying for breakfast, Uncle? Arthur looked at him coldly. Yes, I'm staying. And afterwards, you and I are going to have a conversation. The tone made Mason tense up. A conversation about what? Arthur didn't answer. He just sat at the table and waited. Breakfast was uncomfortable. Silent. The kids ate without understanding the tension. Paige looked at her phone constantly. Mason tried to act casual, but I saw how his hands shook a little when holding his coffee. He knew something wasn't right. He knew this wasn't a normal visit. When we finished, Arthur stood up. Mason, I need to talk to you. Alone. Mason hesitated. Can't it be later? I have things to do today. Arthur didn't move. No, it's now. There was a moment of tension where it seemed like Mason was going to refuse. But finally he nodded. Okay, let's go to the office. Arthur shook his head. No. Here, in the living room. With Eleanor present, Paige stood up immediately. And what about me? I have to be there too. Arthur looked at her. You too. This includes you. We all sat in the living room, me in the armchair, Mason and Paige together on the big sofa. Arthur standing, facing them, like a judge in front of the accused. The silence was dense, heavy. Mason broke it first. What is all this about, Uncle? Arthur took a paper out of his pocket. He unfolded it calmly. Eleanor told me something interesting a few days ago. She told me she checked her bank account and discovered that $38,000 was missing. I saw Mason's face go pale. Paige swallowed hard. So I came to ask you directly, Arthur continued. Where is my sister's money? Mason tried to keep his posture. I don't know what you're talking about. Arthur smiled humorlessly. Don't lie to me. You have access to that account. You made the withdrawals. So I'm going to ask you again. Where's the money? Mason looked at Paige for support. She shrugged, leaving him alone. We used that money for house things, for necessary things. Arthur took a step forward. Did you ask your mother for permission? Silence. Did you even tell her you were going to take her money? More silence. Answer, Mason. Arthur's voice was like steel. Mason stood up, defensive now. She lives here. She doesn't pay rent. She doesn't pay for food. She doesn't pay for anything. That money was just sitting there unused. We had real needs. Arthur laughed bitterly. Real needs? Like what? New furniture? A new car? Vacation at the beach? Mason clenched his jaw. We had debts. We had to pay them. Arthur nodded. Ah, so you used your mother's money to pay your debts. Debts that you created. By your mismanagement. By living beyond your means. And you decided she had to pay for your mistakes. Paige intervened with a sharp voice. She lives here for free. We give her everything. She has a roof. She has food. She has family. What more does she want? I felt something explode inside me. I got up from the armchair, legs shaking but voice firm. Free? I live here for free? Paige looked at me surprised that I was speaking. I clean this house every day. I wash your clothes. I iron. I cook 3 meals a day. I watch your children. I do the groceries. And on top of that, I gave $30,000 for the down payment on this house. And you say I live for free. My voice rose with every word, years of contained rage finally coming out. You don't pay me a single cent. You don't even say thank you. You have me living in the smallest room next to the washing machines. And on top of that, you stole my money. Mason tried to interrupt. Mom, don't be dramatic. Nobody stole anything from you. Arthur cut him off. Yes, you did. That is exactly what you did. You took $38,000 without permission, without notice, without remorse. That is called theft. Paige stood up too, furious. We aren't thieves. We use that money to survive, to maintain this family. She is part of this family. Her money belongs to everyone. Arthur shook his head, incredulous. No, her money belongs to her. She earned it. She saved it. working twice as hard as you, sacrificing her whole life, and you had no right to touch it. Mason changed tactics. He approached me with a pleading expression. Mom, I was going to tell you. I was going to explain it to you, but I didn't want to worry you. You were so calm. I didn't want you to stress. I looked him in the eyes. Those eyes I had watched grow, that I had seen laugh, cry, dream, and I recognized nothing in them. You didn't want me to worry? Or you didn't want me to stop you? He looked down. It's the same thing. Arthur took out more papers. He had printed them that morning before coming. Eleanor gave me access to her documents, and she found something very interesting in your office. Mason. Mason's face changed. Panic. This, Arthur continued showing the papers, is a loan application for $15,000 in the name of Eleanor Herrera. Signed by Eleanor Herrera. Except Eleanor never signed this, never requested it, didn't even know it existed. Page froze. Mason opened his mouth, but no sound came out. You forged her signature, Arthur said, letting the words float in the air. You tried to put her in debt without her knowledge. That isn't just theft. That is fraud. That is a criminal offense. Mason finally found his voice. We needed that money. The debts were drowning us. I didn't know what else to do. Arthur exploded. Then work more. Spend less. Sell the damn car. Anything except stealing from your mother. Mason collapsed onto the sofa, head in his hands. Paige was crying now, but I felt no compassion. I only felt emptiness. And you know what the worst part is? I said with a calm voice, too calm, that I would have helped you if you had asked me, if you had come to me with honesty. If you had said, Mom, I'm in trouble, I need help, I would have given you that money. Maybe not all of it, but something. Because that's who I am. I have always been there for you. Mason raised his head, eyes red. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am sorry. But his apologies sounded hollow, empty, like something he said because he had to say it, not because he felt it. What are you sorry for? I asked. Are you sorry for doing it? Or are you sorry you got caught? He didn't answer, and that lack of answer was all the answer I needed. Arthur took control again. This is what is going to happen now. You are going to pay back every cent to your mother. The full $38,000. I don't care how you get it. Sell things. Take out loans. Work 3 jobs. But you are going to pay it back. Mason shook his head desperately. I don't have that money. I already spent it. I used it to pay debts. I can't pay it back all at once. Arthur expected that answer. Then you will do it in payments. $2,000 a month, without fail, every month, until the total amount is completed, and you are going to give me signed documents where you commit to doing so. If you miss a single payment, Eleanor will go to the authorities with the forged loan application, and then you won't just lose money. You will lose your freedom. Paige screamed. That's blackmail. Arthur looked at her coldly. No, that is justice. Blackmail would be asking for more than what you took. I am only demanding you return what you stole. Mason was crying now, real tears sliding down his face. Uncle, we can't pay $2,000 a month. We barely have enough to live. Arthur didn't flinch. Then adjust your lifestyle. Stop buying things you don't need. Stop pretending to be what you aren't. Learn to live with what you have. I approached Mason. I looked down at him. That position was new to me. I had always been the one looking up to him. But now, with him sitting, defeated, destroyed, I was the one who had the power. You have 1 week to give me the first $2,000. And every month, on the same day, you will give me the next $2,000. I don't want excuses. I don't want justifications. I just want my money back. Mason nodded without looking at me. Yes, Mom. Arthur added one more detail. And another thing. Eleanor's going to look for another place to live. She isn't staying here anymore. Mason jerked his head up. Where is she going to go? Arthur smiled. With me. While she finds something of her own. Something that is hers. Something where she doesn't have to pay with her dignity for a roof over her head. Paige looked at me with hate. And who is going to watch the kids? Who is going to clean? Who is going to cook? I looked directly at her. You. How you should have done from the beginning. And there, in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. I felt power. I felt control. I felt that finally, after a lifetime of giving myself to others, I mattered. I had a voice. I had rights. And no one, not even my son, was going to take them away from me again. The following days were strange, tense. I continued living in that house, sleeping in that room next to the laundry, but everything had changed. The air itself felt different, heavier, colder. Mason avoided me. When we crossed paths in the hallways, he looked down and kept walking. Paige looked at me with barely disguised resentment, as if I were the villain of this story, as if I were the one who had done something wrong. The kids felt the tension, but didn't understand what was happening. They asked me, "Why don't you play with us anymore, Grandma?" And I didn't know how to answer. It wasn't their fault. They were innocent in all this. But every time I saw them, I thought about how their parents had used my money to give them things, toys, clothes, activities, all paid for with my sacrifice while I slept in a room without decent windows. Arthur came every day. Sometimes he stayed for hours. Other times he just stopped by to make sure I was okay. He helped me look for apartments for rent. Small places, but dignified, where I could live alone again, where I could have my own space, my own life. We found some options, but none convinced me entirely. Not because they were bad, but because, after everything that had happened, I was afraid. Afraid of being alone again. Afraid my money wouldn't be enough. Afraid something bad would happen and I wouldn't have anyone. Arthur noticed. "Eleanor, you don't have to rush. You can stay at my house as long as you need. You aren't alone in this." His words gave me strength, but they also made me feel guilty. He had his own life, his own routine, and I didn't want to be a burden to anyone else. One afternoon, while I was packing some of my things in boxes, I heard voices in the kitchen. Mason and Paige were arguing. They spoke in low voices, but the anger was evident. I approached quietly and listened from the hallway. "We can't pay him $2,000 this month," Paige said with desperation. "We barely have enough for the debts we already have." Mason replied with a tired voice. "We don't have a choice. My uncle isn't playing. If we don't pay, they're going to report me. Do you understand what that means? I can go to jail for forging that signature." Paige let out a bitter laugh. "This is all your mother's fault. If she hadn't talked to your uncle, none of this would be happening." I felt rage rising in my throat. My fault? I was the guilty one for reporting that I was robbed? "It's not her fault," Mason said, and for a moment I felt relief that at least he acknowledged that. "We got ourselves into this mess. I took the money without asking. I forged that signature. This is my responsibility." There was silence. Then Paige again. Colder. "Then get the money. Sell something. Borrow it. I don't know, but we can't lose this house." I walked away before they discovered me. I didn't want to hear more. I didn't want to feel anything for them. But a part of me, that maternal part that never dies completely, felt bad. Wondered if I was being too hard. If I should forgive. If I should forget everything and move on like nothing happened. But another part, the part that had awakened after decades asleep, screamed no. That they deserved to face the consequences. That I deserved justice. That night, Mason knocked on my door. It was late. Past 11. I was lying down but awake, staring at the ceiling like I did every night since I discovered the truth. "Mom, can I come in?" His voice sounded small, vulnerable. Like when he was a child and was afraid of the dark. Part of me wanted to say no, that he should leave me alone. But I couldn't. "Come in." He entered slowly, closing the door behind him. He stood by the bed, not knowing where to put his hands. "I can't sleep," he said. "I keep thinking about all this. About what I did. About how I hurt you." I looked at him without expression, waiting. "I know what I did was wrong," he continued. "I know I have no excuse. But I want you to understand that I didn't do it with malice. I didn't do it to hurt you." "Then why did you do it?" I asked with a neutral voice. He sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders slumped. "Because I was desperate. Because the debts were drowning us." Because I saw that money there and thought you didn't need it. That you were living here. That you were fine. That we could use it to fix our problems and later, when we were better, we would pay you back. I sat up, leaning against the headboard. And were you going to tell me? Or were you just going to wait for me to never check my account? He looked down. I don't know. I guess I hoped you wouldn't find out. At least, not until we could pay it back. The honesty of his answer hurt me more than any lie, because it confirmed what I already knew, that he had planned to deceive me, that he never intended to confess the truth. And the loan? I asked. The one you tried to take out in my name. Were you going to pay that back without me finding out too? He covered his face with his hands. That was a mistake. A huge mistake. I didn't know what else to do. Paige was pressuring me, saying we needed more money, that if we didn't pay the cards, they were going to sue us. And I thought if we got that loan, we could breathe a little. We could get organized. I laughed humorlessly. In my name? With my forged signature? Leaving me with the debt? He nodded miserably. I know. It was horrible. It was unforgivable. I don't know what I was thinking. I looked at him for a long time. That 40-something man crying in my room. That man who was once my baby. My little boy. My reason for living. And I didn't feel what I expected to feel. I didn't feel the impulse to console him. To hug him. To tell him everything was going to be okay. Mason, I said finally. All my life I sacrificed for you. Since you were born, you were my priority. I worked until I broke, so you would have what you needed. I gave you everything. My time, my money, my energy. My whole life revolved around you. He kept his head down. And I never asked you for anything in return. I never expected you to pay me back. I never expected gratitude. I just expected respect. I expected that when I was old and couldn't work anymore, you would take care of me. Not with luxury, just with dignity, with kindness, with consideration. My voice started to break. But instead of that, you brought me to live in your house and put me in the smallest room. You treated me like domestic help. You stole my savings. You tried to put me in debt. And when I discovered you, you didn't even have the decency to apologize without being forced. I apologize now, he said with a choked voice. I really am sorry, Mom. I'm sorry for everything. I stared at him. Are you sorry? Or are you sorry you got caught? He raised his head, tears running down his cheeks. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for hurting you. I'm sorry for using you. I'm sorry for not valuing you when I should have. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel that his words were sincere, but I couldn't. Because actions speak louder than words, and his actions for years had told me exactly what he thought of me. The problem, Mason, is that your apologies don't turn back time. They don't return my trust. They don't fix the damage you did. He nodded, wiping his tears. I know, but I'm going to pay back the money. All of it. I promise. It's not just the money, I said wearily. It's what it represents. It's realizing that for you I was just a resource. Something to take from when you needed it. Someone to use and discard. Mason shook his head desperately. No, Mom. It's not like that. I love you. You're my mother. His words sounded sincere, but the actions of the last few years contradicted them completely. If you love me, Mason, it's a love that hurts me. It's a love that damages me. It's a love I can no longer afford to receive. He stayed silent, processing my words. Then he spoke with a trembling voice. Are you telling me you don't want to be my mother anymore? The question pierced my heart. I will always be your mother. That cannot change. But I am no longer going to be your victim. I am no longer going to allow you to treat me as something less than human. I got out of bed and walked to the small window. Outside, everything was dark. You are going to pay me back the money as we agreed. And I am going to leave this house. We are going to have distance. A lot of distance. And maybe, with time, if you prove with actions that you really changed, we can rebuild something. But it will never be like before. Mason stood up too. And the kids? You're not going to see your grandkids? There I felt a pang of pain. The kids. My grandkids. Innocent in all this. I will see them when you allow me to, but I am not going to watch them for free again while you go out. I am not going to be the unpaid maid again. If you want me to watch them, you are going to pay me like you would pay any babysitter." His expression showed surprise, as if he had never considered that I deserved to be paid for my work. "Okay," he said finally. "I understand." I wasn't sure he really understood, but at least he was saying the right words. He walked to the door, but before leaving he turned around. "Mom, I know I have no right to ask you this, but give me a chance to show you I can be better, that I can be the son you deserve." I looked at him with exhaustion. "Mason, I already gave you every chance in the world. For 40 years. Now it's your turn to earn them again." He nodded and left, closing the door softly behind him. I stayed alone in that small room, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. I cried, not from sadness, but from liberation. Because for the first time in my life, I had set boundaries. I had said no. I had demanded respect. And even though it hurt, even though it tore me apart inside, I knew it was the right thing. The next day, Arthur arrived early with news. He had spoken to a lawyer. He had prepared legal documents where Mason committed in writing to return the money in monthly payments. If he failed, I had the legal right to sue. "He has to sign it today," Arthur said. "No more delays." Mason signed. He did it with a shaking hand, but he did it. And that signature on that paper gave me something I hadn't had in a long time. Security. The certainty that my money was coming back. Little by little. But it was coming back. And with every payment, with every month that passed, I was going to rebuild not just my bank account, but my life, my dignity, my sense of who I was beyond being the mother who gave everything without receiving anything. I was going to learn to live for myself. And that, although terrifying, was also liberating. A week after Mason signed the documents, the first payment arrived, $2,000 in cash that he handed me in a white envelope, without looking me in the eyes. I took it without saying anything, without thanking him. Because there was nothing to thank. It was my money. Money he had stolen from me. Returning it wasn't a favor. It was an obligation. I counted the bills in front of him, all there. Then I put it in my purse and went to my room without saying a word. I felt his gaze following me down the hallway, but I didn't turn around. That night, alone in that small room, I held the envelope in my hands and cried. Not of joy, not of relief. I cried for everything I had lost along the way. The trust, the innocence, the belief that family love was unconditional. I cried for the naive woman I had been. And I cried also for the woman I had become, harder, more distrusting, more alone. Arthur called me that night to confirm the payment had arrived. "How do you feel?" he asked. I didn't know how to answer. "I don't know," I said finally. "It's strange. Recovering my money should make me happy, but I just feel empty." He sighed on the other end of the line. "It's normal, Eleanor. You've lost something bigger than money. You've lost the image you had of your son, and that hurts more than any material loss." He was right. For 40 years I had built in my mind the figure of Mason as my greatest achievement, my educated son, my successful son, my son who justified every sacrifice I had made. But that image had shattered, and now I had to accept reality, that my son wasn't who I thought he was, that maybe he never had been. "When are you coming to my house?" Arthur asked. "Soon," I replied. "I just need to finish packing my things and mentally prepare myself to leave." Although the truth was there wasn't much to pack. 2 suitcases of clothes, a box of photographs, some books. That was all I had after 69 years of life. Everything else I had given away. I had spent it on others. I had sacrificed it in the name of love. The following days passed in a tense silence. I continued doing the housework out of inertia, cooked, cleaned, but no longer with the same dedication. I didn't care anymore if the food was perfect or if the floors shined. I did the bare minimum. Paige noticed. "Eleanor, the house is messy. Is something wrong?" I looked at her coldly. "I'm tired. If you want it cleaner, you can clean it yourself." Her face showed indignation, But she said nothing more. She knew she no longer had power over me. Mason tried to approach several times, asking how I was, if I needed anything, if we could talk. But I kept my distance, answered with monosyllables, with cold courtesy, without giving him the chance to soften me with words that weren't accompanied by real actions. One afternoon, while I was folding laundry in my room, he entered without knocking. "Mom, I need to talk to you." I looked at him with annoyance. "I'm busy." He closed the door behind him. "It's important." I left the clothes on the bed and faced him. "What is it?" He looked nervous, restless. "Paige and I have been thinking about all this, about how we've behaved with you, and we want to compensate you." I raised an eyebrow. Skeptical. "Compensate me how?" He swallowed. "We want to give you the master bedroom. Ours. We'll move to the small room. You deserve to be comfortable." The offer took me by surprise, but not in the way he expected. I didn't feel gratitude. I felt insulted. "You think that's going to fix things? Giving me a bigger room?" He blinked, confused. "I thought you'd like it. You've always wanted more space." I laughed humorlessly. "Mason, the problem was never the size of the room. The problem was that you brought me here promising I would be part of the family, and you treated me like a servant. You stole my money. You tried to put me in debt. You disrespected me in every possible way. And now you think giving me a bigger room makes everything okay?" His expression changed. From hopeful to defeated. "I don't know what else to do, Mom. I'm trying to fix this." I approached him and stared at him. "What you have to do is fulfill returning my money, every month, without fail. And start treating me with the respect I deserve. Not like an employee. Not like someone to take advantage of. But like your mother." He nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll do it." He left the room and I went back to my clothes. But his words had left me thinking. Was it possible that Mason was really trying to change? Or was he just acting to look good? Time would tell. Arthur came that afternoon with his truck. "It's time, Eleanor. Let's get your things out of here." I nodded. The moment had come. We started bringing down my suitcases, my boxes. The kids saw me and ran to me. "Where are you going, Grandma?" The question broke my heart. I knelt in front of them, taking their little hands. "I'm going to live with Uncle Arthur for a while. But I'll still see you. I promise." Their little faces saddened. "You're not going to live here anymore?" I shook my head. "No, sweetheart. But you can visit me whenever you want." Paige appeared at the door, arms crossed. "Kids, leave your grandmother alone." She decided to leave. The tone made Arthur tense up, but I stopped him with a look. It wasn't worth it. I hugged the kids tight, kissed their foreheads, promised I'd call. Then I stood up and walked to the door without looking back. Mason was in the living room. He stood up when he saw me leave. "Mom, wait." I stopped, but didn't turn around. "What?" His voice sounded broken. "Are you really leaving?" I turned slowly. "Yes, Mason, I'm leaving." He took a step toward me. "And you're coming back?" I looked at him with sadness. "I don't know. Maybe, when things change for real." "When you change for real?" He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I'm going to miss you." I felt a lump in my throat. Me too. And it was true. Despite everything, despite the pain, despite the betrayal, part of me was going to miss him. Because he was my son. And that bond, however damaged, doesn't disappear completely. I left that house with Arthur by my side, got into the truck, and as we drove away, I looked in the side mirror. Mason was in the doorway, alone, watching me leave. And I felt something strange. It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't revenge. It was liberation, as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Arthur drove in silence for a while. Then he spoke. "Are you okay?" I nodded. "I think so," for the first time in a long time. "I think I'm okay," he smiled. Glad to hear it. His house was small, but cozy. He showed me the guest room he had prepared for me. It had a double bed, a spacious closet, a large window overlooking a garden, natural light, space, privacy. "It's perfect," I said with an emotional voice. "Thanks, Arthur." He hugged me. You don't have to thank me. You're my sister. You'll always have a place with me. That night, I slept in a comfortable bed for the first time in 3 years. No washer noise, no damp walls, without feeling like an intruder. And although my heart still ached, although I still missed my grandkids, although I still wondered if I had done the right thing, I felt peace. A peace I hadn't felt in decades. The days followed. Arthur and I established a routine. He worked during the day. I cooked, but now I did it because I wanted to, not because I had to. I cleaned only what was necessary, and in the afternoons we went for walks, to get coffee, to talk about everything and nothing. He introduced me to his friends, his social circle, older people like us, people with similar stories, people who had gone through family betrayals, through disappointments, through losses, and I started to understand that I wasn't alone in this, that my story wasn't unique, that many people had to take difficult decisions to protect their dignity. One afternoon, 2 weeks after moving, I received a call. It was Mason. "Mom, how are you?" His voice sounded different, humbler, smaller. "I'm fine, son. And you?" There was a pause. "I miss you. The kids miss you. The house isn't the same without you." I felt my heart tighten. "I miss you too." Another pause. "Can we meet? Can we talk?" No pressure. No demands. Just talk. I looked at Arthur, who was sitting in the living room reading the paper. He looked at me and nodded, letting me know the decision was mine. "Okay," I said finally. "We can meet. But in neutral territory. At a coffee shop. Not at your house. Not yet." Mason accepted immediately. "Wherever you want, Mom. Whenever you want." We agreed to meet the following Saturday. 3 days later, and when I hung up, I stayed looking at the phone in my hand, wondering if I was making a mistake, or if I was taking the first step toward real healing. Arthur closed the newspaper. "You're going to see him." I nodded. "I think it's necessary. For both of us." He stood up and approached. "Just be careful, Eleanor. Don't let him manipulate you again. Don't let him make you feel guilty for setting boundaries." I looked at him gratefully. "I won't. I already learned that lesson." He smiled. "Good. Because you are strong. Much stronger than you think." His words filled me with calm, because for the first time in my life, I had someone who supported me unconditionally, someone who valued me, someone who reminded me that I mattered. And that, after years of feeling invisible, was an invaluable gift. Saturday arrived. I got ready with care. Not too much, but enough to feel presentable. Arthur took me to the cafe. "Do you want me to stay?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, I need to do this alone." He nodded. "I'll be at the bookstore next door. If you need me, just call." I entered the cafe with my heart beating fast, and there was Mason, sitting at a back table, waiting for me. Mason stood up when he saw me enter. He looked thinner, more tired. He had deep dark circles, and his clothes hung on him in a way I hadn't noticed before. "Hi, Mom." His voice was soft, almost fearful. I sat across from him without returning the greeting. The waiter approached, and I ordered a coffee. Mason already had one in front of him, untouched, probably cold. The silence between us was dense, uncomfortable. Neither knew how to start. Finally, he spoke. "Thanks for coming. I wasn't sure you would." I looked directly at him. "I came because I'm your mother, but that doesn't mean everything is forgiven." He nodded quickly. "I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know I'm changing. Really." I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "How?" He took a deep breath. "Paige and I are going to therapy, couples therapy, and I'm going alone too, to understand why I did what I did. Why I treated you the way I treated you." It surprised me to hear that. "Therapy." He nodded. "The therapist is helping me see things I had never seen. He's making me face that I grew up expecting you to always be there, that you always gave, that you always solved things. And I never learned to value you as a person, only as a mother." His words were correct, but I needed more than words. "And what are you going to do differently?" I asked. He took a folded paper out of his pocket. He opened it with trembling hands. I made this. It's a plan, a detailed payment plan, month by month, until I pay back every penny. And I also wrote down other things. Things I want to change in how I treat you, in how we relate. He passed me the paper. I read it in silence. Everything was there. Specific payment dates, exact amounts, and a list of commitments. Call you once a week without asking for anything. Invite you to lunch once a month. Ask you how you really are. Listen without interrupting. Don't minimize your feelings. Respect your decisions. Ask for forgiveness with actions, not just words. I felt something move in my chest. It wasn't complete forgiveness, but it was something. It was hope. This is good, I said, handing him back the paper. But I need you to understand something, Mason. I'm not the mother I was. I'm not going to sacrifice myself until I disappear anymore. I'm not going to put your needs before mine always anymore. If we are going to rebuild this relationship, it's going to be different, more balanced, healthier. He nodded with shiny eyes. I understand, and I accept it. I just want another chance to show you I can be better. The waiter brought my coffee. I drank it slowly, feeling the warmth in my hands. Paige told me something last week, Mason continued. She said you were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I had ruined it. And she's right. It surprised me that Paige had said that. Is she changing too? I asked. He shrugged. She's trying. It's hard for her, but she's trying. She wants you to come for dinner one day, to apologize. I wasn't ready for that yet. Maybe later. He didn't insist. We kept talking. This time it was different. He asked about me, about how I was living with Arthur, about my plans, about my feelings. And he listened. He really listened, without interrupting, without minimizing, without changing the subject to him. It was strange, new, and a little healing. When we finished, he paid the bill. We walked together toward the exit. Can I hug you? He asked with a timid voice. I looked at him, that adult man asking for permission to hug his mother, and something inside me softened. Yes, we hugged. It wasn't like before. It wasn't that automatic hug without feeling. It was genuine. I felt him shaking a little. And me too. When we separated, he had tears in his eyes. I love you, Mom, and I'm going to prove it to you. With time, with patience, with actions. I nodded. I hope so, Mason. I hope so. Arthur was waiting for me in his car. I got in and he looked at me with curiosity. How did it go? I took a deep breath. Good, I think. There is a long road ahead, but for the first time, I feel he really understands what he did. Arthur started the car. I'm glad, but don't lower your guard. People can say a lot of nice things. What matters is what they do. He was right, and I wasn't going to forget it. The following months were of slow reconstruction. Mason fulfilled his payments. Every month. Without fail. He called me every week. Sometimes just to ask how I was. Other times to tell me about the kids. I started visiting them once a month. I didn't stay to sleep. I only went for the afternoon. Spent time with the kids. Talked with Mason. Paige kept her distance but was polite. I didn't expect more than that. And it was fine. The relationship between Mason and me remained fragile, like freshly glued glass. But it was there. And that was more than I thought I would have after everything that happened. 19 months passed since that day I discovered the betrayal. 19 months of monthly payments. 19 months of slow reconstruction. And finally the day arrived when Mason handed me the last envelope. $2,000. The last ones. $38,000 completely returned. We were at the same cafe where we had met that first time. He put the envelope on the table and pushed it toward me. It's the last one. His voice had relief but also something else. Pride. Pride in having followed through. I took it and put it in my purse without counting the money. I didn't need to anymore. He had complied every month without fail. Thank you, I said simply. He shook his head. Don't thank me. It was the least I could do. It was my obligation. We stayed in silence a moment. Then he spoke. I know money doesn't fix everything. I know there is still a lot of damage to heal, but I want you to know these months have been the hardest and most important of my life. I looked at him curiously. Why? He clasped his hands on the table. Because I had to face who I really was. The selfish son I had been. The man who used his own mother without remorse. And it was horrible seeing myself like that, but necessary. I nodded slowly. And who are you now? He thought before answering. Someone better. Not perfect. I still make mistakes. I still have to work on myself every day. But someone who at least tries. Who at least realizes when he's failing. That was more than I had expected to hear 19 months ago. I'm glad, I said sincerely. He looked at me with hopeful eyes. Do you think someday you'll be able to forgive me? For real. Completely. The question caught me off guard. I thought about everything that had happened. The pain, the betrayal, the sleepless nights, the tears, the rage. But I also thought about these months. The consistent calls, the punctual payments, the conversations where he really listened, the small gestures that showed real change. I don't know, I replied honestly. Forgiveness isn't something decided overnight. It's a process. And I'm still in that process. He nodded, accepting my answer. I understand. And I'm going to keep working to deserve it. As long as it takes. We left the cafe together. The fresh air hit my face and I felt something strange. I felt closure. Not complete, but something. How is Arthur? Mason asked as we walked. Good. Strong. He continues to be my rock. Mason stopped. I want to thank him. For taking care of you when I didn't know how to. For protecting you when I was hurting you. For being the man I should have been. His words surprised me. You can tell him yourself. He'd be happy to hear it. Mason nodded. I will. We arrived where Arthur's car was parked. He was inside reading a book. He looked up when he saw us and got out of the car. Mason greeted him with neutrality. Uncle, Mason responded with respect. They looked at each other for a moment. Then Mason extended his hand. Thank you. For everything. For taking care of my mother. For not letting me get away with it. For forcing me to be responsible. Arthur shook his hand. I didn't do it for you. I did it for her. Mason nodded. I know, and that's why I thank you more. There was a silent understanding between them. Masculine. Direct. Without need for more words. I said goodbye to Mason with a brief hug. See you soon. He smiled. See you soon, Mom. I got in the car with Arthur. As we drove back, he asked me, Is it all over? I thought about his question. The money payment is over, but the healing isn't over. That's going to take more time. He nodded. And how are you? I looked out the window. The streets passed by. Life continued. I'm fine. Better than 19 months ago. Better than I thought I would be. And it was true. That night, alone in my room at Arthur's house, I took out all the envelopes I had kept. Nineten envelopes. $38,000 recovered. I put them on the bed and looked at them. It wasn't just money. It was justice. It was regained dignity. It was the proof that I mattered, that my life had value, that my sacrifices couldn't be ignored or stolen without consequences. I opened my bank account on my phone and deposited the last payment. I saw the final balance. $42,000. I had recovered almost everything. And with that money, I was going to do what I always wanted. I was going to look for a small apartment. Something of mine. Something no one could take from me. Something where I could live my last years with peace and dignity. I wasn't afraid anymore. I didn't feel lost anymore. Because I had learned something fundamental in these months. I had learned that setting boundaries wasn't selfishness. That demanding respect wasn't cruelty. That taking care of myself didn't make me a bad mother. The following months were of personal reconstruction. I found a small but bright apartment, with a spacious kitchen, with a window overlooking a park. I furnished it with simple but new things. Things I chose, things I liked. For the first time in decades, I had a space completely mine. Arthur helped me with the move. Are you sure you want to live alone? He asked me while we assembled a bookshelf. Completely sure, I replied. I need this. I need to prove to myself that I can. He smiled proudly. You always knew you could. You just needed to remember it. Mason came to visit me a week after I settled in. He brought flowers. For your new home, he said timidly. I accepted them and put them in a vase. He scanned the apartment with his gaze. It's nice, Mom. It suits you perfectly. I nodded. It's mine. That's what makes it perfect. We sat down to have coffee. We talked calmly. There was no tension anymore. Just two people trying to rebuild what was once broken. Now, sitting in my small apartment, watching the sunset through the window, I think about the whole journey. I think about the woman I was 2 years ago. Invisible, used, silenced. And I think about the woman I am now. Strong, independent. With a voice. It wasn't easy. There were moments where I wanted to give up, where I wanted to forgive everything and return to the comfort of not making waves. But something inside me had awakened, and once awake, it couldn't go back to sleep. My relationship with Mason remains imperfect. It probably always will be, but it exists, and it's more honest than before. He calls me. He visits me. He asks me. And I set boundaries when necessary. And he respects them. That is more than many mothers in my situation can say. At 69 years old, I finally learned to live for myself. It's not selfishness. It's survival. It's self-love. It's dignity. And it's what we all deserve, no matter the age. No matter how much we have given, we always deserve respect. We always deserve to be valued. We always deserve to live with dignity.